All right, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our next panel is getting ready to start.
Hello, everyone. We are off for the last conversation of the day and the weekend. And as per usual, we're going to kick off as people get their lunch and come in. And this conversation is the power of influence, athletes as brands. And I think it's really going to sum up a lot of what we have talked about over the past couple of days. So joining me for this conversation, I have Evin Shutt. Have I pronounced that right? Or Shoot?
Close. Shoot.
Evin Shoot. Always want to get someone's name right. Global CEO of 72 and Sunny. Who... She's got her crew in the house. Anna Palmer next, who is the owner of the Boston Legacy soccer team. In case you couldn't tell by her shirt. Next, we have Nancy Atufunwa, who is the SVP of Olympic and Paralympic marketing at Octagon, which is a global sports, entertainment, and culture agency. And last but not least, Rheann Engelke, who is a women's sport agent and represents, you were just telling me, around 35 different athletes, including Alana Ma, who is here this weekend. Okay, so I want to start with a big picture question, and I want you all to give me a 1 or 2 sentence answer, which is, what is influence today? What does it mean? And Evin, I'm going to start with you.
Hey, you're starting with really easy questions.
What is influence?
Well, I think influence is when you have a platform, and it's a responsibility in a lot of ways to others are listening to you. Mm-hmm. What do you do with it? What do you choose to do it? How do you choose to use it? And I think anyone who is here and fortunate enough to be at this event, whether you are an athlete that has earned your way to the podium or the Olympics, I feel like that seems like the Olympics isn't a big deal. You've earned your way to the Olympics, which is unbelievable and not easy to do, or to the Paralympics, which is not easy to do. You now have a platform and a responsibility and an opportunity for influence. And if you're a supporter who's here, you have access to someone who has influence. So therefore, you also have a platform for influence and a responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. Rheann, I'm going to come to you next from the agent perspective. How do you think about influence?
I think of influence kind of twofold, in the sense that someone watching has the ability to see themselves in you and also feel inspired by you. So I think it's those two things combined.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a bit, we're going to talk about all the athletes you represent, but Alana is such an example of someone who went massively viral, yes, for her sport, but also because of who she is. What's her secret in storytelling and showing up online that has made her the icon that she is?
Let me answer this for her. I think it even starts with what drew me to signing Alona. We have now been together for 3 years, and I saw her online. I was like, this is my kind of girl. Like, she is a girl's girl. I love everything she's saying. And I just knew that I loved her, and the other women in my life loved her. So that was the kind of woman that I wanted to sign. And that was prior to Paris, but I knew from the jump she had all the building blocks to become what she was. So Paris was incredible and such a huge boom for her, but it wasn't a surprise by any means. I knew I really like to sign women and look at sports in the sense of by women and for women. And Alona was a perfect example of that. And that's really the type of women that I look to work with as well.
We love that. That is a woman's woman is kind of the core of what we're doing this weekend. Nancy, I'm going to come to you next, and I'm actually going to give you a slightly different question. You can, of course, tell us what you think influence means. But you and I were just catching up beforehand, and you said you have a really good list of what athletes should and shouldn't do online. Now, you often work on the brand side of Octagon, but from a brand's perspective, give us a couple of do's and don'ts from an athlete who is building their online presence.
Yes. So at Octagon, we work with brands to support them in telling their partnership story. So sometimes a part of that is talent. And when we look for talent, especially, and I'll use Delta for an example because they're a sponsor of She Weekend here this weekend, we're looking about their story and their connection to Delta. For example, there's a young Paralympic woman who Delta worked with for a number of years. Her very first flight, she was adopted as a young child. Very first flight coming home with her mom was on Delta, and they still had that. They still have the photo of the first flight. So she told us the story of that journey and what it meant to her with her mother, and that was a connection point for Delta. Right, the brand is nobody better connects the world. The don'ts. There was an athlete we were looking to sign, deal ready to go. They had engagements. He went online and complained
About the brand.
about the brand
Online.
for one of our another one of our clients, and we were like, "You really just had this in the bag. What happened here?" So it's important. There's a level. I think you said responsibility. There's a level of responsibility when you have additional exposure to the general public. So you can't, I mean, I can't really go online and complain publicly. I don't think my bosses would like that too much. But so figuring out different avenues to support what you need, looking at the responsibility of your platform, being honest, like ignoring the stunts to try to get attention. People just want to see how authentic you are. Some of the strongest athlete engagement executions that we've had are with athletes that don't have mass followings. Their followers trust them. They look for the type of content that created the connection in the first place, and they continue that story and that journey with them, so they all feel like they're on that path together.
And Nancy, when you said avoid stunts, what do you mean by that? What's a stunt? Sounds like a dumb question, but I want you to tell us.
Gosh, I think this is why the word influence is having such a hard time in society right now. We're kind of at that apex where it can go one way or not, right? So influence is like, I know we all see on those Instagram page, we all follow someone on Instagram who debunks influencers when they go in and make up a story or try to cause harm to a business for likes by giving a poor food review, right? We see it primarily with restaurant reviews. So I look at that as a stunt, but it's just doing something that's not honest and truthful, and doesn't give any value to society. You're kind of subtracting in that moment.
Okay, really good point. So Anna, you're building a women's soccer brand from the ground up. So in addition to showing up online, what other things can your players do that really help impact kind of knowledge of the club, but also ticket sales? What are you asking them to do beyond showing up online?
So I think with each player, there's a level of authenticity. So what does the player bring to the table that might be different than anyone else on the roster? And so we try to put players in positions where they can really shine. So if it's hometown hero, so we have a couple of players who grew up in the soccer clubs around Boston, and so we'll make sure that we have them actively involved in youth soccer, so that way those girls can look up and say, I can do that too. We also have some that are more interested in business, so we'll put them on panels with our sponsors and allow them to do networking and mentorship through that. And so I think it's, as a player, figuring out, yes, what is true to you, and then our job as a club is to then plug them in the community in ways that feel true to that player.
When you
Can I
say
add
yes,
something?
yes,
I'm
Nancy,
so
of course
sorry.
you can. You don't need to ask permission.
okay.
Just say it.
Just coming, so a prior role, I was head of marketing at USA Water Polo, and our role with our athletes is we said yes to everything because typically, especially here in the US, they were looking for gymnasts, track and field athletes. So our policy was we said yes to every single appearance if it did not impact competition. And that actually helped us grow our visibility with the sport, with NBC, with media. They ended up using some of our athletes as some of the promotional athletes that they would utilize for the games. And they did tell us that was part of it, is we never turned down appearances. The fee was never too small. We, as an organization, we saw the collective goal and all bought into that.
I'll just build on it. We work with a lot of brands, obviously, from United Airlines to Panera, and we have a statement inside our company, which is you have to be customer zero. And I think as athletes, if you're going to choose to partner with a brand, you have to love it enough that you can be customer zero. And what I mean by that is when we worked with Adidas, my kids only wore Adidas shoes when we went out of the house. I didn't care how cool he may have thought Air Force Ones were. I was like, Adidas is paying the bills. We are walking the walk here. When we go out to lunch, we go to Panera. Panera is a client of 72 and Sunny. That's what my kids know. They know their order. They know to pick two. They know all the things. The United Airlines is a really important client. Who am I flying home to LA tonight? United, right? So I have to live it for my company and what we stand for because I'm a true partner to these brands and I have a responsibility. And I think likewise as athletes, pick the brands that you're going to be stoked to order a Pepsi and not have them apologize that they have Pepsi. That's our goal. Let's stop apologizing if they say, sorry, we only have Pepsi. Awesome news, we have Pepsi. They're a client. But I think that you have to live that and be excited about that. I'm not saying you have to have it every day for lunch. But if you are partnering with a brand where you're like settling to do it, then you're going to have a really hard time living customer zero.
That's literally questions that we would ask Rheann. So we work closely together.
Okay.
And we tend to, for our clients, when we build our athlete ambassador program, there's a set list of criteria that's important to the brand. And we send them off to the agents to help us understand if their talent aligns with those criteria. And it goes into the evaluation. We start with over 100 Olympic athletes and about 75 to 100 Paralympic athletes for one individual client's ambassador program to probably net out 10 to 15 members of that program.
And the criteria is trying to get to the bottom of whether they align with the brand values. Is that right?
Absolutely. We've moved brands and, we counsel our clients to move beyond the podium, right? So there was a time earlier in my career where we were looking for who had the most hardware, right? Those were the talent that everybody was looking for and was interested in. Now we're really focused on the story, the connection to the brand, how they live in that brand. So Delta, we would never, we would never sign an athlete who had just been promoting a competitive airline for literally the year before, because that's not an authentic story. Mm-hmm. And then it looks to the audience, it's a check movement, right? Mm-hmm. So within the category. So that's something that we would also review in our selection process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's the same thing on the agent side. The first thing I do when I sign a client is we get on a meeting and I pick their brain completely. It is, what are the brands that you're obsessed with? What are the categories that you would love to be in? What are some stories that you would have to tell? What are hobbies that you would have that no one would know about? We make sure that every single thing is authentic. I truly do not believe that if a deal does not feel good to you, the check is not worth it, because you need to live with yourself and you need to feel joy in everything that you're doing. So it is equally important to us. And in the same way that brands are looking to work with athletes that are going to authentically tell their story, I actually look at it as every single campaign is an opportunity for the athlete to tell their story too. It kind of has to be a win-win scenario. So we always look at deals as a way almost of building blocks. Is this giving you the opportunity to tell something about you as well? So it really is that authenticity on both sides.
Anna,
jump in on the team side. Team is interesting because we're effectively giving the sponsors to our athletes as opposed to doing that one-on-one. And I think we have a responsibility then as a team to figure out what are the activations that do feel authentic to those athletes. So like TJ Maxx being a sponsor, we do pregame fit. And so our athletes have like the walk in and you're doing the photos and it feels really authentic to who they are too, because they're now thinking about what are they doing when they're in the stadium and what are they wearing. And so how do you create those activations that help build the athletes' brands alongside of the team brand as well? I think is a really interesting challenge for clubs sometimes.
That's a really good point. You've heard me say it before. If you have a question, please don't wait. Put your hand up. We will take questions throughout because this panel is for you guys to get as much out of it as you possibly can. Rheann, I'm going to come to you. What can athletes be thinking about beyond follow count in terms of online metrics? What should they be studying to get a sense of how their brand is performing? First to you, and then anyone else, please add.
Yeah, good question. Honestly, I think that the truth is that athletes can get really, really overwhelmed by feeling like they're not doing enough. But I think that brands also need to understand that athletes are a little bit busy being the greatest athletes in the entire world. And it's especially with women athletes that they are also perceived as influencers. Male athletes do not get the same expectations to make amazing content and to be posting all the time. So I always try to relieve that pressure from athletes and say, what feels the most natural to you? We say this thing of like the shower thoughts. Like, what is a funny thought that you have like in the shower that you'd think no one else has? I think Alona recently did a good video of this where she was like, I cannot not talk to somebody. I'm always going to say hello in the elevator. Like, she could have kept that to herself, but she put that online, and Alona is really, really good at that. But so are a lot of athletes. I just encourage them of whatever is already natural to you, just share it a little bit more because you would be shocked at the fact that people want to hear that. And in the same way that, sometimes all of us in our careers, it's so second nature to us. Same with athletes. And they're like, why would anyone find that interesting what I'm eating in the morning or what my routine is? It is because a lot of people don't know about it in the same way that this is all very natural for us to talk about, and we forget that people want to hear about it.
Yeah, and Rheann, tell me a bit more, and then Anna, I'll come to you. Tell me a bit more about that interesting thing you said that female athletes are expected to be influencers in a way that men aren't. Why is that? What have you seen?
That is a layered question. I always say that sports is really just a microcosm of society. And the truth is that women athletes for a really long time did not have the opportunity to go professional or to make a lot of money in their careers. And as a result, they had no option but to say F it and put it out there online and try to do what they could do, where I think male athletes, it started, they were kind of more in an opportunity where they could make a lot of money from their sport, and they were fine to not really show their personality or stay more quiet. But as a result, it has created this marketing space where women have thrived in an environment that was not made for them. So I think that, women... But because of that, I do think that women are now expected to do that a little bit more. They're expected to be able to be more polished or be funnier or show what they're doing online, where men, it is a little bit more acceptable for them to be a bit quieter, or maybe if you see a TV commercial where you can tell that they could barely utter the lines. No disrespect to men, but women, like everything in society, we're kind of expected to do it all and to be it all and to be dynamic. So one of the first things I tell brands is it is like nails on a chalkboard when one of my Olympians or professional athletes is called an influencer. They are an athlete, they're a medalist, and they just also happen to be great at showing their personality, but also because they had no option not to.
Anna and then Nancy, yes.
I want to piggyback on that a little bit because there's a really interesting piece of research that we found when we were looking at building the club that was for women's sports. People follow fandom around athletes more than they actually followed the teams. And so when we looked at NWSL and where were people's affinities lying, it was that they had a player that they loved. And then if that player got traded to multiple teams, they would follow that player, not the team, which I think, to your point, it's hard as a female athlete then to try to create that fandom on your own. But I think it's also a huge opportunity because it means that your brand can live outside of the team and it can follow you if you do that right. And so I want to encourage all of that in women's sports. I think it's really unique and it's very different than men's sports that way.
Great point. Nancy?
Yeah, I was just going to add from a metrics perspective, women from a data point are primary decision makers in their household at a higher percentage, even if there's a family, they're single, roommate share, whatever dynamic there is.
The women are running it.
It's the woman making the decision. So that tends to be the point of what drives the concept of influencership. Female influencers make more money than male influencers because males are not the decision maker in the household. Women are going to buy from other women that they trust, all the things. So unfortunately, from a brand perspective, we do connect the two because at the end of the day, there is still business to be done. And there's a fine line and a balance to respect the original talent and the identity of the athlete or the talent, but also understanding that there is an influencing perspective of the relationship. Influencing is an act. I think we've turned it into identity in this society. Yes.
Evan, I want to come to you with sort of a bird's eye view industry picture that you have. If you're talking to the athletes in this room and you're thinking about data and deals, where is the market demand right now? Like, what should they be looking at if they're trying to get that first deal, that first partnership? What might be a good place to think about starting?
That's a great question. It's going to matter what they care about. To
Okay.
be honest, that's where the deal is going to come from. But I was just reading this morning, 56% of Olympic fans are women who tune in every 4 years. We're talking to female Olympians and Paralympians in this room. That's who we're celebrating. And that's also, as Nancy just said, that's who has the buying power. So when it comes to brands and how we talk about the opportunities for these athletes, it really does start with who are the brands that need a female audience? Who are the brands that want female sports fans to purchase their products? Which, by the way, female sports fans are way more likely to purchase merchandise than male sports fans. So we've got all the things lining up here that make sense for brands to invest in these Olympians and Paralympians. No brainer. What we need to do is figure out how we connect those dots faster. And I think that's a lot of what we try to do at 72 and Sunny. I know that this whole group is trying to do and that this weekend is about. I think the other thing is in terms of sharing more and being asked to, everyone here it feels like I'm just a normal person. You're not. You're extraordinary. You're Olympians and Paralympians, first and foremost. But people do love to see, like, oh, I'll never forget Oprah Winfrey being like, if you're up at 4:03 a.m. in the morning, so am I. Went to the bathroom too. But those are the types of things that people want to be like, oh, okay, you seem like this iconic Olympian, but you're normal and I can relate to you. And then when you talk about a product you use in your daily life, that's where you build that trust. And that's where brands that we work with start to lean in and say, okay, tell me more. I want to work with that person because they seem like a real person who is an extraordinary talent and has a platform that can influence other people in a positive way.
Listening to all of this, I'm thinking about how what it means to be an athlete has evolved over the years and the decades, because not long ago, competing was enough. You weren't expected to have this second job of posting and showing up online all the time. And I just wonder if that's something that isn't appealing to you or isn't who you are. Is there a way to evolve into a cultural powerhouse without that in this day and age? Or do you have to be online on your personal social media channels?
From a brand perspective, it's a mix. When we do a program, an athlete ambassador program, we have athletes that are definitely online all the time. We have athletes that are not online. We have athletes that post every so often. So there's no one size fits all to the agreements we're developing. We're looking at what makes that athlete comfortable, allows them to still perform, creates that connection from the brand, and we both can tell a shared story. So for some brands, though, who do purely look at talent as influencers, they want to see you online hitting those posts. And for athletes, that just cannot happen. You know, one conversation we always have with the agents that we work with, what's your athlete's blackout period when we're going into a game? So, right, so there is a time period, that we cut off request because they should be laser focused on final trainings, all the dotting the I's and crossing the T's so that they can perform at their best, at their personal best at the games. So it's important to have a hybrid and understand that not everyone can do that. My chief comms officer pings me every so often, so no LinkedIn post. I'm like, yeah, no. It's so it's just not for everybody.
I mean, I'll just be really blunt in the sense that so I started on the NBA side of things at CAA. So I have a really kind of interesting perspective of all male representation to now all women representation. It was completely fine if one of our NBA players decided to delete his Instagram account. He was still a multimillionaire. So until leagues and everything else pay women exactly what they deserve, they don't have the option to be quite quiet. I mean, truly, how often do you see Messi posting a hilarious video online? Probably not. But you women athletes do have to. And that just is the reality of the situation. I think a lot of us as women in the workforce can relate to that in kind of our own lives and own society of, again, having to do more. But that truly is the blunt answer. Now, what I will say for women athletes, if social doesn't come supernatural to them, of course, there's other avenues. And that's exactly what I think it's really important to find an agent that sees you as a person first and not a checkbook. The relationship is what's so important. I have an incredible Paralympic swimmer I represent, Allie Truitt, who most of her gigs are all through speaking engagements. She's a keynote speaker and she has a book coming out and a documentary coming out. It's called Stronger Than You Think. Check it out. But yeah, you have to find if that doesn't come natural to them, then it's up to me to roll up my sleeves and find opportunities for them to make money that do come natural to them. But I do think that we need to address that question while also addressing the elephant in the room that it is a gender thing.
I would also just say pick your channel. You don't have to be on all of them. If YouTube Shorts, way more comfortable there, go there. If it's TikTok, go there. And you're just going to be a creator of, you like to film, you like to edit, but it's still under your name. There's different ways to do it. You don't have to be the talking head on Instagram if that's not your comfort zone.
There's something you said, because you said this is about giving tips.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
that's
tips.
finding the right agent. And I think that sometimes gets missed a lot in this conversation.
So tell us how to do that, Nancy.
There are agents that will look at, I just want to see your social following numbers. That's my decision making on whether or not I work with you or even push you out to brands. There's different sizes of agencies, small, medium, large, boutique. I tend to take the sport into consideration. When I was at water polo, I had an athlete who was at a very large agent representation agency, and she just really felt like she wasn't getting seen. And that experience was kind of factual because I was on the buyer side of just literally the year before and did not even know she was represented by that agency. So when I took on my role, I introduced her to a smaller agency and then blew up. She's now a major face doing well. I think the other thing you said that's important is the journey with that agent. Some agents really just want to work with talent who are in their competition era. That's the time that they can really maximize. It's very important, in my opinion, for Olympic and Paralympic athletes that can find agents that can take you to and through your competition. So into retirement, transitioning into speaking engagements, activism, entrepreneurship, whatever those interests are, and not cut ties as soon as you retire or don't get named to a games or don't podium, right? That's super important. I tend to tell athletes to you really have to get naked and raw with your agent. So if you're in sometimes
speaking.
literally and figuratively, right? So if you can't be in a dressing room with your agent, that's probably not the right mix. If you can't cry to your agent, that's probably not the right fix. If you can't have an honest conversation or have a challenging conversation, that's probably not the right mix. And if you don't want to hang out with your agent, that's not, because you spend so much time together. And so there's a dating component to finding the right agent and not just going to the first person that showed you interest.
Yes, I absolutely love that. And I mean, that is why I think that there's a lot of power. And I'm not saying that a woman athlete has to be with a woman agent, but I think for the women in the room, think about what it is when you're with your girlfriends and how much you're able to completely open up and say absolutely anything. I think it is kind of similar. When women are able to do business together, really, really incredible things can happen. I also represent the absolutely incredible Amber Glenn, who didn't even think of it, but when she was at the Olympics, she said she was coming off the ice and said that she was on her period while she was competing. Us, we can talk about being on our period all day long. I know the fact that she had cramps yesterday. And it's then my job to also make sure that that conversation is just as normal for the world to hear, because it should be. And I have athletes that have 5,000 followers. I have athletes that have 5 million followers. And truthfully, the common denominator is, of course, I look at women that are absolute beast in their sport. But I also love loud women. I love women that want to make an impact and want to leave this world better than they found it. And I look for the women that I can build with, because I love a long-term relationship. And to your point, it really is a dating thing. And that's why when I meet with women, I actually have not used a recruiting deck in 4 years or so. It's always a conversation. And especially when somebody is coming into signing with an agent for the first time, it's so hard for these athletes. Who is telling them, who's giving them a blueprint of how they find an agent or who's the right one? So I always try to speak to them more of an educational thing rather than being salesy. And I tell every single person that I'm recruiting, please talk to all the other agents that are reaching out to you. Go kiss all the frogs. Go do all of it. You have to find who's right for you, and it's no different. It's so funny. We always try to separate like business and life, but isn't that the exact same thing of life? Of like, you got to find maybe that's why I'm still single. I haven't found the right person. But you really do. I don't want to be with someone in a business setting that they feel forced to be with me, or I coerce them to be with me. It's a mutual relationship, and that's why I also look for women that I want to hang out with, that I feel inspired by. It's a two-way street.
What a cool job you have. Can I just say that you get to pick these women that you can be in a room with and support?
They're the coolest.
Very envious. Nancy, you look like you're going to say something, and then I'm going to come to you guys because you've got to have questions. This is an amazing panel. Okay, great. Nancy first.
I do want to acknowledge that not everyone will have an agent, and I think I don't want anyone to walk out of this room thinking like I don't have an agent, so this just is not going to work. I actually met Alona before she signed with you, and we worked with Delta, and then you came in and helped wrap that up, and she was managing on her own very well, right? Sorry to call you out there, but you can tell I think that is the power of social media and influence, to have the opportunity to tell your stories yourself. We've hired and worked with so many athletes for our clients that do not have representation. And then after they go, and we do play a pseudo role because we don't want them to make any mistakes. So we'll put an agreement in front of them, and we'll say, we really recommend you go get counsel and review that with them before because they're just like, where do we sign? And so we do put in protections for those athletes that are not represented with a licensed agent to ensure that they're still supported. We'll give the same advice. Go talk to a bunch of agents, have conversations, but I think that's something I didn't want anyone to walk out the room feeling like they needed to.
Really good point. Anna, and then we're coming to Jessica.
So one thing on that, so we on the ownership side have both worked with athletes individually and then also a lot of agents to think about what should our ownership group look like for the club. And so one thing I'd like to leave everybody with, if you're a female athlete, I think there is a huge opportunity in women's sports right now to find franchises that you can use your platform as a part of theirs as well. And so whether that's Signal Volleyball or Boston Legacy FC, I think if there's a team out there that you're interested in, ask, because I think a lot of these groups, like, we're actively looking for female athletes to join those organizations. So definitely encourage that.
Can I just build on that? As a proud part owner of the San Francisco Signal with a bunch of the crew here, one of the best parts about joining the only women-owned team in the League One volleyball is the network that it has created, and this incredible support network of women, and the power of women coming together, supporting each other, and the social media storm it creates. I mean, we joke we're kind of like the red posse everywhere we go, and we show up in Cannes and at events like this, and Chantel's got on her red blazer today with the glyph embroidered on it, by the way. Very jealous. But the support and the immediate positivity and optimism that feeds it, that will give you confidence, and that will put you in rooms with people you never thought you could be in rooms with, and will speak your name in rooms you're not in and bring you into those rooms. And so I would just encourage everyone, whether you're on social media, you have an agent or not, come talk to everyone up here. Come talk to Chantel, Sarah, I see you, Glenn, who's a co-owner as well, and ask the questions, because these are the people that will be in rooms and they can speak your name and continue to promote you and lift you up.
Okay, we're doing Jessica and then Alona.
No, Alona, please. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? Like, there's no Jessica before Alona. Go.
Okay, Alona and then Jessica.
My question's for Anna. So we were talking about, like, sports people love the individual athlete. Is that like a major thing though, as you're starting teams? Like, you have to find kind of a key player or something like that? I remember when Wave was getting big in San Diego, that's where I live, like, they had to find Alex Morgan. Is there the stress now of trying to find a key player? And then with that, you're like, okay, we'll have to give so much money to them, but then you have so many other players. How do you balance that? And is that the stressor?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. I would say it also is dependent on market. So with Boston, we did a slightly different strategy on that we really wanted our team to reflect the city. So the jersey I'm wearing right now is the Common Ground jersey, and it has all the different neighborhoods. And there's a lot of cultural diversity in Boston. And so when we went out to recruit, rather than thinking, okay, we need one player that is going to be the absolute superstar, we tried to get players who everybody in the city could look to and say, oh, I see myself in this person, or like, this person grew up in a club kind of similar to me, or she has same background as me. And so I think it's a balance. There's a lot of pressure, obviously, to have the one major star, but we've also found that some of those stars develop, and you don't know who the fan favorites are going to be before you put them on the field. And so I think it can go either way.
In the Olympic and Paralympic space, the global media format is the individual storytelling. I think up until the 70s, they used to attempt to tell the collective team story, and they weren't getting traction. So they moved into an individual format, even within the team. I know, when I was on that NGB side, I had teams, right? So I had to balance how I told the collective story of the team, but pulled out who we were going to push as our, media faces of the team. So that's just from a storytelling perspective. People connect with individuals, not a team story. So the media really, especially in the Olympic and Paralympic space, they really dove into that. So it's important within a team sport that the team understands that, and not that we're playing favorites. Absolutely not. It's just we need to get attention on the sport and the team, and this is the format to do it.
I think it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time for us, because being a new franchise, all of our focus right now is like, everybody needs to know Boston Legacy FC exists. And so I think as the club matures, it probably does become maybe a little bit more pressure on finding the star athletes that then can continue the story. Right now, though, I think we're in an interesting spot where we can be a little bit more brand focused, and we'll see how that evolves.
You're going to make the next stars.
We're working on it. We've got some good ones in there.
What makes a good one?
Man. Yeah, right. For us, I think there are club values. So with Boston, it's grit, we call it style, but this idea that you're going to go out and you're going to give it your all and you're going to do it in an authentic way to you. I think they're naturally a little bit more fighters. And for us, it's finding the person that matches the ethos of the city, but does it in their own way. And then is willing to have that style shown to the world. So when you were talking about like being able to be a little bit more vulnerable and like show who you really are, the combination of that where fans can fall in love are really important.
Jessica, over to you. Mike over your shoulder.
Oh, thank you. So I just wanted to say first, I've loved being a fly on this wall. This conversation has been amazing. As someone who has set up so many married couples, if that's on your bingo card, tell me your prereqs and pet peeves, and we will.
Everybody.
Oh, wait a second. Don't leave me.
You're going to have a line out the door now that you've said that.
I will
Get in line, girls.
happy to be of service to everyone in this room. But I've been chatting for the past 2 days with Chantel, and we're talking back and forth of how do we support the women in the room come tomorrow when we're not all together anymore. Chantel is helping people through business. I'm thinking about how to help people through visibility. As someone who's been a storyteller for 30 years, what we've been talking about, a bunch of the athletes and I, is what kind of story do you tell, but where do you tell it? So AI knows if you're searching for a keynote speaker or you're searching for expert to be in a media story, a lot of earned media clips will pop up if you do a search. But I'm learning from a lot of these athletes that even if they have articles out about them, it doesn't necessarily bump their social media, so therefore it doesn't help them get brand attention. Can you just talk for a second about the visibility that you think matters, and does it count if it's news articles to get a brand's eye, or is it really the social media following that gets the brand's eye? Because you only have 24 hours in a day, so do you try to get yourself more media, or do you try to post more content with your shower thoughts?
It's a good question. I kind of think, actually that's again shockingly kind of a layered question, because the other thing too is it's much less common for women athletes to have publicists, because the way that agents work is we only make money when the athlete makes money. We take a commission off of that. The way that publicists work are you pay a certain amount to them each month. And women athletes a lot of times did not have that additional income to do so. So I actually kind of act as pseudo publicist for a lot of my clients. But I do think the best way you could ever tell a story is through yourself. That's why, honestly, even I've done some interviews before and whatnot, and it is always kind of funky. I'm like, is that really how I said that? That's not what I meant. But like here, I'm able to say it to myself, you know exactly what I mean. I think it's the same for athletes. If you do want your story told, there's no better person to tell it than you. Media is cool and important and influential. Absolutely. So are you. And what better way to tell it than through you? That's always kind of where I would suggest to start.
I would just add and tag the brands. If you're going to post it, I can't tell you how many of our clients have sent us stuff or we've sent them to say, have you seen this? Have you seen her talking about her love for insert the client? And then that triggers the relationship and the conversation. Also tag 72 and Sunny, we'll repost it. So there you go.
Just to add to that, that's actually a good point. I just last week had a client come to me and say, why isn't my content really translating into endorsement deals? And she has the most polished, incredible account. Like it's chef's kiss of how I was like, this is almost how we used to think of Instagram, of we want everything to look amazing and whatnot. But I was like, where can brands see themselves in your content? And I'm not saying start doing hashtag ad or anything like that. But for example, you have the most amazing makeup I've ever seen. I don't know how you do that makeup. I would love to see you post that, because you're posting the final picture of it, but could you post the experience of it a little bit? You can just show the brands that you authentically use. And then what I do is I screenshot all of that and I send it to the brands and make sure that, because everything starts from an authentic story point. So for athletes, it's not like switching up what you're doing, but if your goal is to make endorsement monies, where can a brand see themselves in you? I'll also give a funny example. She is in the room, but maybe Alona posted a funny video about the misconception around condoms in the Olympic Village. You better believe Trojan was in our inbox the next day. Like, hello, obviously. Things like that. And she's just really humorous. And that's something that so many people are curious about. The amount of times people ask that question, it's like, you really think Olympians are worried about getting busy when they're trying to get a medal? No, that's a misconception. So it was just a funny thing that she posted. She knew it would do well, but also a brand can perfectly see itself in that. So that's like a good and funny example of it.
Great answers, but I will say, as the journalist in the room, I have to give a counter, which is that social media is incredible. Absolutely, tell your own story. There's also a power that can come with having your story told by certain very established media brands, and also helping your story reach an audience that goes beyond the people who are in your following. So I used to work at a newspaper in London. We put the captain of the England netball team at the time on the cover at a time when netball players had no money and no visibility, and that completely transformed the way that team was funded. So I would say a combination of the two.
Yeah,
But
sorry.
By the way,
agree.
it's all social media at this point, right? Like,
Yes
so
and
much
no.
of it is posted, the live events, the different types of media. It all lives through different platforms that are reposted through it. So it really does
Yes
feed
and no.
each other.
I
think a huge
understand
part of it.
that from an athlete or from an agent's perspective, there is a risk that comes with speaking to certain publications because you do sacrifice a level of control. But I think if you're speaking to the right people and you're researching the journalists who you're speaking to, it can also be very powerful.
No, you are 1000% right. And we do think about that in the sense of, for example, Gabby Thomas graced the cover of Vogue. But we're talking about the highest, but like, of course, that gave her so much credibility in the fashion space. It wildly increased her rate of how she was doing endorsement deals. Or like when Alona went to the Bristol Bears, we chose one English publication. We put her on the front cover of a newspaper that everybody reads every Sunday there. That kind of stuff is iconic. And it is not to discount media whatsoever. It's also showing yourself. But when you have an iconic moment with media, just use it in like a really smart way, in the same way as like social media of also making sure you're telling your story.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap? Yes, one question from Breezy. Who has been our best question asker?
Valuable
over,
question asker.
Like,
I just
ten,
have so many questions.
10 out of 10 for your attendance and engagement.
I just want to ask you guys, when you step into conference rooms with brands, right? If they ask ChatGPT, how much should I pay Alona Mar with her followers versus a male athlete that has the same number of followers, ChatGPT is going to tell you a lower number for a woman, right? There's a natural bias within the industry. Endemic sponsors, I've had endemic sponsors that are like, we just can't pay women what we pay men, even if they achieve the same results, even if they're better than the male results, because that would bankrupt us. Like we would have to lower our male marketing budget in order to increase the women's marketing budget. And so how do you guys enter those conference rooms and speak to brands and try to get women paid at an equal rate?
Well,
Very, very important question.
I can start from a brand perspective. Any deal that I've ever been connected to, gender does not play a role into the compensation. Delta, for example, when we went into Paris, we were very intentional about how we were going to look at the team and carry it forward from an athlete perspective. And the number one, it's summed up into equity, right? So we have gender equity on the team, so there's not going to be more male. I think we typically have had more female the last couple of games. Olympic versus Paralympic, there's parity there. There's pay parity. There's formulas that we have developed, but gender has, for us and for any of my previous clients or deals that I've done, gender has not played a role in that because, one, I'm a woman, so why would I discount other women? And I think inherently a lot of brands want to do good, and so it's like our roles to counsel them in that way. Another thing many of you guys knew of a past experience that Allison Felix had. So going into Paris, we were, again, with Delta, very intentional that no life events impacted an athlete's compensation. So we didn't select you because of your your likelihood to podium, so we weren't going to penalize you if you didn't even make it to the games, right? Because there is a story in going to the games. There's a story in not going to the
And
games.
you're talking about maternity leave with Alison Felix, is that correct?
Maternity, if someone passed away, and any type of major life event, we did not want to be another thing that the athlete was dealing with in that challenging moment.
Yeah, I think that that is also why it's so important for brands to work with incredible people like you, because absolutely. But I will say that is not the case for all brands. You are right, Breezy. And I'm sure you're speaking from experience. Again, coming from the NBA experience, so then when I walked into the WNBA experience, I was shell shocked. It didn't even make sense from a percentage standpoint in terms of followers or anything like that. And how I combat it as an agent is I just speak so bluntly. This is my this is my whole job, is kind of constantly proving the fact that women are here, they make a lot of money, they have a ton of impact, and it's still like, or like, that's a fun thing to do. And of course, all of us in this room do not believe that whatsoever, but the industry at large is a very traditional one, and it's can be slow to catch up, and it can be formed on a lot of biases. So how I do it is I actually have done this many times of in a sportswear conversation, for example, if they say, it would be that amount, I go, oh gosh, well, that's weird because I know what you pay that guy. And gosh, oh my God, her followers are more than that. So wait, what are we talking about? It's like I speak very bluntly. I don't make it an opinion thing. I make it a fact thing. And it has worked to my advantage many times. And we have gotten the highest paid deals to ever happen on the women's side many times because we're just speaking about facts. I'm leaving biases and opinions out of it. And that has been my biggest tool to combat a lot of those frustrating scenarios. And I do understand it's a budget thing and a money thing, but also I have never been comfortable on operating on the way things are. I always like to operate on the way things could be or should be.
I'll also just say, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yes, 100% in the pros when it comes to male sports versus female sports. I think in the Olympic and Paralympic space where you might see it or have that experience or have a feeling that you are encountering that might be the sport type, right? So in the U.S., we love a track and field. We love a gymnastics. We love basketball. There may be, you may see disparities between those sports and other sports. You may see disparities between Olympic and Paralympic. I think oftentimes, especially for our Paralympic athletes, there's a sentiment like, oh, if we just give them this, VIK or some piece of equipment, they'll be fine. Paralympic athletes primarily actually require the most spend to support their training. They have different types of prosthetics if they require one that they need to have, right? It's not like a 24-hour prosthetic that they can use to eat, sleep, and train. They have their doctor's appointments. They have all of the things to make sure that they can perform at the highest level, and that costs way more. If a Paralympic athlete's equipment is damaged, that takes them out of significant time because of the specialized like mechanics or repair people that will be required to support that piece of equipment. So I think that's where, in this space, where you see a lot of disparity.
Mm-hmm.
Still not necessarily gender in the Olympic and Paralympic, definitely in the pros. But I think we're moving in a space, especially with media, focusing more on para, focusing more on the other sports that we're slowly moving that.
That dial.
Yep.
We have to wrap. I feel like we could go on. I know there's more questions and more points. Please come and grab the women on their way out of the room. I don't know if they want me to say that or not, but anyway. Rheann, Nancy, Anna, and Evin, thank you so much. Thank you all for your amazing questions. Thank you.
My mic. All right, ladies.